Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of The Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, host also of RT's talk show, Crosstalk. Well, Peter, yesterday we touched on the events in Palestine and the terrible situation that seems to be getting worse and worse there. And so I think we should, continue to discuss it. Um, Everyone knows what has happened. There was the events in with the Supreme Court, Israeli Supreme Court ruling about removing Palestinian homeowners and replacing them by Israeli settlers. That kind of provoked the initial crisis in Jerusalem. That also was compounded by heavy-handed tactics by the Israeli authorities, barging into the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and then there was the escalation from Gaza, which rocket launches from Gaza, and then of course the usual very harsh, disproportionate retaliation by Israel. So we're once again back to where we were several years ago. Escalation mounting upon escalation, and no one quite knows how to bring it to an end. There have been now several attempts at holding a UN Security Council meeting. The United States has thwarted that. As things stand, there is apparently going to be a meeting on Sunday. We don't yet know for certain, but that it's scheduled for a meeting on Sunday for the Security Council. There have been two attempts to issue a statement from the Security Council that the United States has refused to go along with. The 14 other members of the Security Council were prepared to go along with it. But there's a deeper problem here. I think it was just that the Biden administration just seems to be completely clueless as to what to do. They came in with the idea of just reversing everything that Trump did. Trump, as we know, pursued a ferociously one-sided pro-Israel policy. Nothing for the Palestinians, everything for the Israelis. Of course, horrifically unjust, but at least it had a policy. The Biden people kind of wanted to reverse that, but did not replace it with anything else. And I think that kind of vacuum of policy, vacuum of thinking in Washington has contributed to the chaos that we see in the Middle East, because no one really knows what the Biden people are up to. They don't have a Middle East peace plan. They don't have any ideas of how to go forward. And I think into this vacuum, is now being filled by people trying to arrange things on the ground. All right, Peter, what's your
Well, and because there is a lack of clarity from the Biden administration, we have to point out the Biden administration was criticized, for better or worse, not calling Netanyahu early days, even though Netanyahu is one of the first to congratulate Joe Biden. And so obviously, Joe Biden has experience with the Israeli portfolio. I'm probably assuming he dislikes Netanyahu as much as Barack Obama did. I'm just speculating there. But nonetheless, the policy hasn't changed. I mean, it doesn't change under Trump, doesn't change under Obama, doesn't change under Bush either. Okay, well, that shouldn't be said. Bush Senior did push back, or at least rhetorically, under James Baker.
Well, I think they did organize the Madrid
Right,
peace
right,
conference,
right.
and that led to the Oslo Accords. So at least that, for a while, seemed like a hopeful way to go forward. But that was Bush Senior who did
Right,
push for the
right.
Madrid conference.
But, no, but nonetheless, it's really wagged the dog here. And one of the interesting, well, the number one, this is an intra-Palestine conflict. Forget what Fox says, CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post. Just ignore what they say, because they're misleading you. This is an intra-Palestine conflict. What do I mean by that? What is recognized under international law to be Israel and the Palestinian territories, which are under occupation, including Gaza, Technically, from the Israelis' point of view, Gaza is not occupied, but its borders and airspace and access to the sea is all tightly controlled by Israel. So yes, it's under occupation. And people will quibble with words, but ask the Palestinians that live there. It's the biggest open air prison in the world. Okay, but see, what's interesting for me, because what's happening and what we're keeping our eye on closely is Hezbollah. Its reaction to all of this, because they are making some murmurings, and this is something that everyone has thought about. The Israelis, Hezbollah, Hamas, there's that one scenario where everybody tangles at the same time, which of course with the aim of overwhelming the Israelis. And plus with all the rioting in the West Bank, that does pin down a lot of resources for the Israelis. There's not a whole lot they can do about the missiles coming in from Gaza. These are very low tech. 20% of them don't even work. But Gaza is sending a message. They're saying, "We know you're going to bomb us to hell. That's what you always do." Okay, all right. And now this time around, we're going to show you how much we've advanced. Okay, because under international law, the Palestinians have a right to resist occupation, and this is exactly what they're doing.
Yes.
And then with all of this talk, Biden should do something. What should he do? I'm not really sure. I mean, you watch Fox and all this. Biden should do something, and they never say what. Well, what? I mean, no. Biden has already done what all these administrations have done. Is they're painting themselves into a corner and being controlled by the Israeli lobby. I mean, you can't give a blanker check. I mean, and that's already been given.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So all that happens is you get these rhetorical flourishes from the U.S. government. Israel has a right to defend itself. Israel must ensure the security of its people. And then when it comes to the Palestinians, there's simply the pro forma. Well, we must avoid escalation, and we must avoid civilian casualties on all sides. That's about it. But of course, it's of course too much to expect from Biden to in any way challenge the Israel lobby. It's just not who Biden is. It's never been who Biden is. That's not going to happen. One thing that Biden could do, which notably Obama did not do, is at least present some kind of a fresh peace plan, a way forward. What's the program? It could be under the auspices of the quartet, which includes the U.S., Russia, the EU, and the UN. So you could do that. I mean, that's what the Russians are calling for. You could do it by going back to the Saudi plan from already quite a long time ago now.
I think 2001, right? Yeah.
2002, I think that was. Yeah. But at least there are things that you could do, but it doesn't look like the Blinken State Department has any real interest in the Middle East, and they don't look like they have any idea of putting forward some peace plan. Because at least if you put forward a plan and some kind of a conference to which you invite the Israelis, the Palestinians, and so on, well, at least it looks like you're doing something to dampen down the tension. This isn't doing anything. This is just simply adding fuel to the fire, and it looks like the only way it's going to be resolved is if Israel just uses absolutely massive force and beats the Arabs into submission, as it has done in the past.
Yeah, but that doesn't change anything.
No, it doesn't change anything. But
I mean, what the interesting thing that's happening, and I don't know if they're connected, but they certainly reflect upon each other. The fact that Trump really, I mean, we could talk about Jared Kushner. I think he was in la la land almost all the time when it came to this. Okay, and Trump was just pro-Israel, and he didn't really care other than that, really. Okay, anti-Iran. I mean, very black and white, very simple. However, pulling out of the JCPOA is a turning point. And why do I say that? Because it sends a message all across the Middle East and the greater region is that the U.S. can change its mind very easily on something, and it rearranges the pieces on the board. So what do we have right now? You and I made a video about it. Saudi Arabia and Riyadh and Damascus are parlaying, they're talking, okay? And this means also some kind of parlay with Iran and Saudi Arabia with Damascus as a conduit. What else is going on? For the first time, last few days, first time in years, the Turks and Egypt having quote unquote frank conversation. What is going on here? It's something that you and I've been saying all along. Right. Let the region talk to itself. You don't need a filter. And this is what's happening. So, I mean, maybe it's good that, Blinken is, he's more worried about, critical race theory at Foggy Bottom than poking his nose around in something that he doesn't have a clue about. Right. Okay. Right. No, I mean, no matter what, everyone, it's going to be nasty. It's always nasty. But every new iteration of this shows Israel is losing ground. Okay, I mean, it's meddling in the Syrian international proxy war was very much to Israel's detriment. You know why? Because Syria has air defenses now. It didn't have it before all of this. Now the Israelis still bomb, but they're a lot more careful now. They'll hide their jet planes next to civilian airliners. It's very devious because you're putting a lot of civilian lives at stake here. But they know that you can't just do it 100% with impunity, maybe 50% in impunity. But I mean, its odds are getting lower and lower, and this is what we're seeing each time. Do you think the Israelis look forward to taking on Hezbollah? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. No, I think that's a very good point, because what Israel likes to do is to have these short conflicts in which it can pummel somebody or other for a few days and then it's over. It really, really does not want a lengthy, protracted conflicts, and it wouldn't want to be a conflict with Hamas, Hezbollah, at the same time. Right. And then presumably would have to then also be involved in a conflict in Syria, because if Hezbollah is involved, then Iran will probably be supplying Hezbollah with missiles, and they will go through Syria to Lebanon, and therefore that's going to be another headache for Israel. So yeah, no, there's no question. But you also have to then ask is that the United States has really, really wasted its resources getting involved in that ridiculous invasion of Iraq. That was something Israeli lobby called for. And, the U.S. has been bogged down there. And then getting involved in this regime change war in Syria, neither of which has done anything at all to America's advantage, and has done nothing to further stability in the Middle East. In fact, the opposite.
Well, yeah, because now Iraq is an ally of Iran. Right. Okay, Syria nominally had an independent foreign policy. I mean, of course, it had to deal with the vagaries of the region, but now it's very much more dependent on Iran and in Russia, ergo not to Israel's advantage. Every single one of these things. Okay, and then I'm sorry I have to say it because it really irritates me. When the Biden administration agreed to release funds to the Palestinian Authority, something that Jared Kushner prompted Trump to shut down, that money is not going to Hamas, everyone. I know you hear it. Hamas and Fatah hate each other. They're not helping each other. Okay? As a matter of fact, Hamas came into being because of another gross calculation on the part of the Israelis. They wanted to tame Fatah, so they, let's get a religious extremist group, and, conquer and divide. And oh my God, Hamas won a democratically election paid by the U.S. State Department.
Right. No,
I mean, every single time they screw up. The perception in the media is that Israelis always pull it off. No, they don't. They screw up almost every single time. Sure, assassinating scientists, Soleimani, okay, fine, right, okay. But you know what we're seeing right now, George? We're seeing Soleimani's revenge.
Right. No, I think that's right. I remember back in around, I don't know, maybe it was around 2000 or something. That was still when Bashar al-Assad said that every new generation in the Arab world hates Israel that much more than the preceding generation. And that's something that it's like it's not doing any good. It's like new generations arise, and it's not changing the perception. So when Trump thought that, we'll just change the equation, we'll forget all about the Palestinians, we'll just ignore them, pretend that they don't exist, and we'll work out something with all these other Arab states, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and so on. And then the Palestinians sooner or later will realize, hey, there's no better deal on the table than whatever we're shoving down their throats right now, that's going to work. Well, it's clear that it doesn't work. I mean, these people haven't given up. I mean, they've been struggling against the Israeli or the Jewish intruders, settlers for more than 100 years. They're not just going to give up. They say, okay, well, if Trump says that there's no hope for us, then there's no hope for us. It hasn't worked, and so there really is no way forward other than have to come up with some joint peace initiative. Again, I mean, Blinken, who's so desperate to have a conference with Putin, that could be something that could come out of a conference with Putin. A joint U.S.-Russian peace initiative in the Middle East. Russia has credibility with both sides there. So if Russia extends an invitation to both sides, it'll be very hard for the Israelis to refuse. So that's something I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, again, they keep talking about the summit, but I haven't heard that this is going to be on the agenda for the summit.
Yeah, I think, I'm very pessimistic that any plan is possible right now because of Israeli intransience and dishonesty, frankly. I mean, Oslo, Madrid, they never committed to any of these things here. All they wanted to do was turn the Palestinian Authority into a pet, which it could feed or not feed at its whim. Okay, and I fault the Palestinian Authority for it too. Okay, because they're basically capos. Okay. I mean, they have the right to beat up on Palestinians too. It's pretty pathetic, But what's happened, because I think the clock has run out, and it's actually a far worse dilemma for these Zionists, because you have by default created the solution, a one-state solution. That's what you've created. You've created a one-state solution. Now, Israel, and this has been the argument, the dilemma that Israel's had to face since the 67 war. I mean, are you going to be an apartheid state where you have second-class citizens, third-class citizens? Or are you going to be a democracy? And, and it's pretty hollow, Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East. It's pretty hollow because they have a choice right now. And I don't think they're going to make the right choice. And the thing is that, and this is what I was mulling today. I mean, I had back-to-back dentist appointments today and my head is throbbing. So I tried to think of, put something in my mind to make me, focus away from the pain. And it's all of these wokeists in the United States. Do you think if they had any idea what's going on with the Palestinians, do you think how woke would they be about American foreign policy towards Israel? Again, this pathetic hypocrisies of these idiots.
Right. Right. No, I think that's right. Well, I think that what you could do is, of course, what doesn't happen, which is that the United States can use its enormous leverage over Israel. I mean, that's what it has. I mean, this is something that Gideon Levy has repeatedly said. Yeah, that the United States has enormous leverage over Israel because Israel really ultimately, when it comes down to it, will not dare to defy the United States. It just cannot afford to do it. So it has that. Now, Russia, which maintains good relations with all sides in the Middle East, just doesn't have that leverage. I mean, the only leverage it has, all sides trust Russia, but it doesn't really have any real leverage over Israel. America
it doesn't write a check every year.
Right, exactly. But as you mentioned, George H.W. Bush. I mean, George H.W. Bush did apply pressure, and that, it did yield some results, but it also put paid to the George H.W. Bush presidency. I mean, that was not an insignificant factor in that led to his election defeat in 1992. So nobody really wants to challenge it, and Biden's not going to challenge it. Blinken doesn't want to challenge it. So there's really, we're in a position again where the American administration is out of ideas, and just simply hoping that, well, if we can make, a couple of phone calls to Netanyahu and to someone or other in the Palestinian Authority, it's all going to go away. So it does look very bleak. This UN Security Council, I have no faith at all that anything is going to come out of that.
Why would anyone in the Palestinian Authority pick up the phone? Why? What point?
Right.
Okay. I mean, this is the poverty of American policy, is because it's been so one-sided. It's not a mediator. It is an actor in all of this. Okay. Russia is a mediator. It
could be, but it doesn't have
send a delegation, from Gaza, from West Bank, Israel. I got a place in Sochi. Show up on this day. We'll talk.
But it would but by itself, it doesn't have the leverage, because America just writes a blank check to Israel, and so Israel doesn't have to pay attention. I mean, Israel has good relations with Russia, but ultimately it doesn't listen to orders coming from Moscow in the way that it has to listen to orders from Washington. But we know about the Israel lobby. I mean, it just.
Well, I mean, just as we went chatting here, 44 Republican senators have demanded that the Biden administration stop negotiations with Iran because of what's going on in Gaza.
Right.
What? Huh?
Yeah.
They don't have anything to do with each other, okay, at all. But again, that is the narrative. It's the narrative of it. It's suddenly Gaza, for some reason, started shooting missiles into Israel. Oh my goodness! Israelis have to defend themselves. They never give the backstory. They don't even give the backstory of the last week, George, let alone the last 40, 50 years.
No, and unfortunately, these events have now been caught up in the kind of familiar political cycle in Washington, in which the Trump supporters blame everything that's going on Biden, because Biden is apparently too soft on the Palestinians and too soft on Iran, and it's all really his fault. And then for the Biden people, kind of in defense, they say, well, no, it's all Trump's fault. It's all, he made a mess of this. Because it's a silly argument, but that's the way it's being played out in the media. Nothing at all about the actual substantive issues that are involved here. It's just, whose fault is it? Oh, it's Trump's fault. No, it's Biden's fault. That's that.
And both major political parties and the media allowed this to happen. They allowed this issue to invade domestic politics. It's their fault.
Right.
You got to credit the Israelis for worming their way into all of these institutions. I mean, I don't fault them. They're doing it for their national interests as they define it. That's what they do. But the Americans fell for it. And depending on the political season, who's tripping over the other to be more pro-Israel? Okay.
No, that's true enough. It's absolutely a remarkable phenomenon. All right. Well, we will, of course, maintain our laser-like focus on the events in the Middle East, including the ostensible UN Security Council meeting on Sunday. Remember, we are now on Locals, so please look us up there at the Locals, the gaggle, gaggle.locals.com. We're also on Rumble. Look us up on Rumble. And if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.